Hey, Dave Molenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I got a cool question for you this week that I want to start with. And it's on a scale of 1 to 10. So we normally don't do that. So we're deviating a little bit today. But the question is how serious are you about growth? Now, all the entrepreneurs, all the business owners listening immediately went right to 10 and totally cool with that. But I want to make sure that we're really looking at growth in the right way. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Rick Heyland. How are you today, sir?
Great, Dave. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. The president of CI4life. I love it. Tell me, what does CI mean to you?
Well, after retired from consulting, I wanted to do something. My purpose statement is all around continuous improvement. And so it just felt like a natural thing when I wanted to go to online that just pull from my purpose statement, and CI stands for continuous improvement. So it was an easy transition.
Awesome. So cool. And we're going to jump into some of that stuff today. So thank you so much for hanging out. Salt Lake City, you're calling from. So fantastic. And you said you just had some snow there?
Yeah, we got our first skiff of snow in the mountains. Rain in the valley, but I think it'll smarten up and we'll get some great fall weather here in a minute.
Yeah, like that in Wisconsin here. If you don't like what it is, wait a few minutes and it'll turn. So awesome. So you're a couple years into this next transition in your life, and the continuous improvement sounds like a lot of work. So, entrepreneur, business owner listening, they're so busy right now, Rick, running their business, right? They got all these hats that they're wearing. So kind of tell me, put my mind at ease for me, forget the people listening, but just put my mind at ease, because that continuous improvement sounds like a ton of work. Is that accurate?
You know what? It is a valid concern and a really valid question that many people ask and have. Because as you know, Dave, small business owners and entrepreneurs are to the max, 120% as far as time, energy, their passion is all in. There's no question about that when you own a majority or more of your business.
Right.
And so, but it is one of those things that what we teach around continuous improvement is common sense.
Okay.
It's just not always common practice. And it is put in some systems, procedures, different mindset, if you will, different skill set and tool set, so that you can fix the problem. The analogy that I love is, the entrepreneur that's got a swamp in the backyard and there's an alligator in the backyard, and oh my goodness, I got to protect the family, I got to protect the fort, and so I'm going to go back there, but those alligators are hungry and aggressive, so I get my shovel, and what do? Do I go back and smack those alligators, all those things that keep us busy every day?
Sure.
Or do I go around back and actually drain the swamp and let it out so you don't have the alligators anymore? So that's what continuous improvement is. How do we fix the process so that the swamp's gone and the alligators are gone for good?
Wow. Well, that's a great analogy. And, I think about a lot of entrepreneurs, and I put myself in this category as well, that I probably have a blind spot when it comes to this. I don't know I have a swamp in the backyard. I've lived with it my whole life. I've been raised around, in this case, the swamp for that analogy. So how do you help entrepreneurs and business owners understand kind of the state of their business? Is that something that you get involved with at CI4life?
Yeah, the quick answer is a good assessment of where they are on their revenue productions and systems, and getting some feedback on what are the strengths, what are the gaps, what could be the action plan going forward. A bigger picture answer is self-awareness. In my career, in my consulting career, and even going into big business, I can tell you the most successful leaders, and there's a whole list of great leadership characteristics, but it starts with self-awareness. In the change business, if you want to become better, whether you're small, big, personal development, your podcast is all about bringing those two together, and I love that. But it starts with self-awareness and openness to change. And if you're not either of those, you're going to keep draining the swamp. You're going to keep knocking down the alligators, and be proud about how hard you work. And you should.
Yeah.
But let's figure out a better way to do it so that the alligator's gone. I have my time and energy back, And so you can either vacation, do your community service, or you can spend more time thinking about being a CEO of your small business versus just a worker and a doer. So there's lots of different ways to answer that question, but that's how I'd answer that.
That's so cool. And I tell you, there were a lot of, in case you didn't notice, there were a lot of brake lights that went on. As soon as you mentioned self-awareness, Rick, we end up, entrepreneurs, like I said, we're going so darn fast. We don't, the last thing I need to do is stop and see how aware I am of things around me. We do a lot of work with EQ, the emotional quotient, and emotional intelligence, which really talks a lot about that self-awareness. So I appreciate that you bring that up. I do think it's a stumbling block for a lot of entrepreneurs because, like I said, I have a choice of either calling this customer back, helping this team member, or sitting there in my mind doing nothing, kind of evaluating where I'm at, And again, I put them in these black and white boxes just purely for me. But those are struggles that we all have to deal with every single day. And I think if we don't start with the self-awareness, we're going to build on a less than solid foundation. But that's me. I'm just curious.
No, let me tie into your point there. And you're a meaning and purpose guy as well. But I read a McKinsey study in preparation for my book, and it's in chapter 1. And it talks about, in this McKinsey study, the most effective leaders, small, medium, large-sized businesses, had 3 things going in their company. One, obviously, is IQ. They got smart people, but we read that in a lot of books. You got to have really smart people in the business to figure out, smarter than you are, to figure out the challenges of the business today. The second thing is EQ, to your point. Yep. And then the third thing, if you really want to leverage your business, top quartile performance, it's got to be the MQ, or the meaning quotient. So I think those last 2 have been ignored in business. A lot of it, we just get smart people and ask them to work hard, which is a great start. But now you and I are making a clarion call for, if you really want to take the next level in your business, get more EQ and get more meaning quotient or purpose quotient.
Yeah, so I think most people have probably heard of IQ, obviously. And I think probably most people have heard of the EQ piece. They may be a little less familiar with that. But the MQ is really probably new for a lot of people listening. I know it's new for me. So again, help us understand what that looks like in a normal company that, you've seen have success once they understood their MQ.
Yeah, and I hope I don't misquote the actual percentages, so I'll put that caveat out. And again, in the same research paper, and by the way, when I went to research the book and the power of purpose, as I'm sure you did, I found 2 studies. One is more the research mental health side of it, and there's 11 benefits to having more purpose and clear purpose in your life. And then on the company side, the same McKinsey study showed that when you have MQ, not just IQ and EQ, that you get 10%. I think it was actually, I hope I don't misquote, but it was a significant amount higher of performance versus the Dow Jones. And I'm not going to say the percentage because I can't remember it right now, but it was a significant benefit. So I don't misquote that study. But it's significant benefit when you add meaning to the organization, not just smart people.
So meaning means purpose. I understand why I'm here. I mean, I know that the statistics that I found and find when we're talking about engaged employees, I talked about that in my book. Right now, Gallup shows 2 out of 3 people show up for their job every day in the United States and they're not engaged. I mean, they're not interested. They're not motivated. They're not really doing much to further themselves or the company. They love to say, those 4 words, it's not my job. So, the MQ has got to be one of those things that once you find it, you really got to guard and protect that person, because that's the meaning of life, so to speak, is the meaning of that company. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So a couple of ways to tie into that one. I think about it as far as big P purpose or small p purpose. And as a leader in an organization, Big P purpose is, think about the tech companies. They're probably the easiest example to think about. Google is about getting information. Apple in the original time was about, their purpose was to get that laptop, that computer in front of everybody in every home, right? So they had a clear purpose. And that, despite incredibly stressful situations, that kept everybody engaged. And so you'll say, well, what if I'm a lumber company or a resource company or I'm a commodity company? How can you find? And so I think it is worthwhile for leaders to articulate to their employees over and over again, big P purpose. For example, I worked many years ago, 28 years ago he was the supervisor of what they call a stud mill. And it was a small sawmill. And he would constantly, his name was Greg, he would constantly bring to the employees the purpose of how their lumber is changing the world.
Wow.
Either their humanitarian Habitat for Humanitarian effort that they were doing, that they donated some lumber for, how they were helping shelter for people, how the quality of what they did made such a big difference in people's homes. And so he would go on and on, even though it was a commodity business, to bring purpose and meaning to what they're doing. The other angle I would answer your question on, Dave, is that I do a lot of my coaching with millennials, that kind of 20 to 40 range. And they're not going to put up with what I put up with or my generation put up with. They want meaning. They don't just want money. They want meaning in their work. So that puts real onus on leaderships to be great. And one of the ways you can do that is to bring purpose and remind people of what we're doing is significant. But there are small P purpose things that we can do to bring meaning to everyday job. And that's little things like positive recognition, little things like, instead of demanding and telling, asking open-ended questions, people for feedback. So yes, let's do the big P and get people super clear on what our organizational purpose is and keep reminding people of that. It's not a one-time effort. And then also as leaders, let's do the small P stuff. Let's bring recognition. Let's bring engagement. Let's bring those little things every day, because all the studies show people want to work for their immediate boss. Yeah, they want to be part of it, but if their immediate boss is a real stumbling block, they're out. But it can also help keep people in. So those smaller practices to bring meaning every day are huge for retention of employees. And we know how important that is in today's economy.
Absolutely. I think personally, the days of working 50 weeks a year just to live for those 2 weeks of vacation, you get abused at work, you come home and you're just beat up. I remember the Wonder Years show, and that Kevin's dad just came home just totally depleted of all energy, and he just sat there and just kind of didn't even move at times. And I don't remember that as much with my parents, but watching that, thinking, wow. And then you go for your 2 weeks, and it goes by so fast. And now you're back to your 50. To your point, I think the next generation, Rick, is not going to put up with that. It isn't putting up with that. But if there's old school, leaders listening that are saying, you know what, that's the way it is around here. If you don't like it, then go find something else to do. That clash is eventually going to, I think, be the demise of the company, because you're going to eventually, retire. All the old school people are going to retire. So, I love that fact that we're looking at this in a different way. Unfortunately, we still have 2 out of 3 people that aren't engaged. So I think the small P that you're talking about, these things to catch people doing something right, to really, help them along in their day, find out what's really exciting for them. A lot of these no cost tools that we can put into place to really motivate them is awesome. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, Dave, before you move on, let me just build a bridge on that one again. And those are EQ activities for leaders, right? They're how to ask an open-ended question, how to engage employees in the problem to get solutions rather than tell. Right. Giving recognition and being okay with that. That's all EQ stuff that brings more meaning. So it kind of fills in that equation, if you will.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think, we do a lot of work with DISC, and DISC can tell you, like, if you run an assessment on one of your whole team, let's say you have a team of 10 people for simple math, and you run an assessment on 10 people, you might get 5 of those people that are motivated by that recognition, you also might get 3 or 4 of them that are motivated by public recognition. And there's such a difference, because sometimes people really enjoy public recognition in the group. They want to be identified as a leader. They want to have their successes called out. And then there's certain people on our team that do like getting called out, but they'd much rather have, lunch with the boss and, have it as a one-on-one type thing. So I think the days of just doing it the same way for everybody are really over. And the better that you know your team, the more that you're going to have that success, and that continual improvement is going to be probably different for you than it is for me if we were both on the same team. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. We used to call that different strokes for different folks, right? Go back to the sitcom in the 80s, but
Yep.
The principle is true. What works for these two people may not work for these two. I mean, think about in raising kids or whatever you are. Right. Everybody is so different, and what motivates them. And that's really the art of leadership, is figuring out what are the things that motivate this team. That drawing them out in that meeting didn't work, but taking them on a one-on-one lunch is amazing. And so you're absolutely right. Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah. Well, and if you're listening and you don't think you have time to do that, and you don't have the creativity, you don't have whatever, the energy, the alternative is just such a bad alternative of doing nothing and just assuming that everybody's going to stay happy in your company. So it's kind of like it's a no-win. If you don't invest the time, you're not going to win. And if you don't, because they're not going to stick around. So you almost are forced into this, which can add stress and stuff. And I was looking at your website and saw a couple of tools. I was curious about the weekly planner that you offer. So kind of fill us in on that tool, because that might help the people listening thinking they don't have the time to all of a sudden, either make the time or create the time.
Yeah. And I think weekly planning is a superpower. And in fact, I developed this is also on the website, but I developed a planner that has what it has is the first page has purpose, your purpose statement. Second page has your goals. Third page has your weekly planning. And then as you get in, it's daily planning. And by the way, the other half of the daily planning page is gratitude and learnings.
Oh, nice.
We can talk about that from a personal development and getting smarter and self-aware.
Yeah.
And being content and happy and a great person to work with. But yeah, weekly planning is the superpower. And my recommendation, Dave, is that Sunday night or Monday morning for a half an hour, you review your goals. Now, if we're talking whole life goals, where my faith, my family, my health, my fitness, my CI for life, and my finances. And what are the important non-urgent activities that I want to accomplish this week? I got a whole bunch of things in the calendar, but those are meetings. Now I'm talking about really planning out those important non-urgent things that I need to take care of to move my relationships forward, to move my business forward, to move my finances forward, or whatever your goal areas. But same principle for work, right? Think about the 4 big categories at work that you need to, maybe as a small business owner, you've got, costs, you've got revenue, you've got employees, what are your categories? And then identify each week, what are the important non-urgent activities that you are planning to do? And then of course, what you do with that weekly plan, you're intentional. You can do more with less time. People say, I had 6 kids or still have 6 kids and 15 grandkids. And you say, well, how do you do work? How do you do family? You got to be intentional. If we're trying to do all we're trying to do in today's busy world, if you're not intentional, your time will get sucked up in the vacuum of time. So super important to be intentional and articulate on what are those most important things that I need to accomplish this week, and then work it in your daily plans as you see fit.
That's awesome. I wrote down, plan your day or your day will plan you.
Yep.
And I think it's crazy. And I can attest to this firsthand, Rick, that, I would start my day out and I would show up and I'd have this pile of stuff that I wanted to get done. And for me, full disclosure, I love to procrastinate. So I would do kind of the easy, fun ones first, leave that tough one down in the bottom. But then I would get busy in other stuff. And before you know it, that thing didn't get done. Day one, day two, day three. And before you know it, it's like, wow, now you're operating from this spot of uncomfortableness rather than controlling, the plan, so to speak. So how much time do you invest in clients in that, weekly planner? Is it a lot, or do people just kind of use it when they have time, or how critical is that for you?
Yeah, absolutely critical. If you want to change the trajectory of your performance, it has to do with starts with your weekly planning. And so it's just 30 minutes, quiet, get still, get super quiet at work before everyone comes in, or at home on Sunday night, and take 30 minutes to plan that out. And then daily, start your day or end your day with 15 to 20 minutes of daily planning. And then you've got your weekly in front of you, you've got your calendar in front of you, and you're trying to put those things together so that you can be super intentional and be on your front foot, right? In athletics, we talk about being on your front foot, not reacting.
Sure,
so how do I proact? That is through weekly and daily planning. Otherwise, if you're working at home, your family interruptions, your employee, your phone call, your email, there's lots of things to get super busy. And I was really busy today, but did I get the two most important things I wanted to do? And that only happens through that daily planning process where you're both reflecting on the day and the wins, what you could have done better, and then planning for the next day.
Wow. And that's why I think I started this out with that question about how serious are you with your growth? Because if you set a 10, then that means that whatever we're talking about right now is going to sink in and be done. But I can tell because I'm already justifying in my mind, Rick, I'm just going to, again, lay it out there. I'm already justifying in my mind how, well, let's wait a minute here. Sunday night, that's still kind of the weekend, and Monday morning, I'm on the racquetball court at 5:30. So I'm like, I can't do it because I get up at 4:30. So, maybe, now I'm this is happening. And that's where I have to really check that at the door and say, okay, if I'm really serious about growth, and if you're not, that's cool. I totally get it. It's, there's no right or wrong here. It's just something that we're offering today and talking about. But if you're serious about it, then you have to sit down and carve it out. And I would say it has to end up on your calendar. It has to end up as a 30-minute chunk, right, on your calendar. Otherwise, it's super easy to kind of, let me do it Monday afternoon. Let me do it Monday night, right? And before you know it, it doesn't get done. Are you a pretty firm believer and advocate on the calendar side on this?
Yeah, I amen to that. And I would just also add the importance of really, if you want, and you mentioned procrastination earlier. And by the way, I think our listeners to our podcasts, they either have enough pain because it's taken time, right? They're listening to it in their car, or they're listening to it at home, or while they're working out. They either have enough pain in their business or life that they're willing to change, or they adopt and have the mindset of continuous learning. And that's what's so cool about these podcasts, because those are the two groups that are listening. So those tend to be the people motivated for change, and that's why they're listening to your podcast. So that's the cool thing about it's usually the people maybe that don't listen that need it, or are still struggling with change. But just big recognition to the people that do spend time listening to podcasts, reading books, doing those things, because their mindset is, I want to get better, either happier or richer or more successful, or a combination of all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe you're listening and you are thinking someone else really needs this. I'm fine with it. I don't
then
care.
Share it.
Exactly. However you got to do it. But I tell you, I can tell you, this is so funny. I'm probably 80 or so episodes in. My first episode was with a good friend that's a LinkedIn expert. And, I thought to myself, I'm going to really tell the world about all the things that I knew. And Rick, it took like about 3 minutes into the first podcast, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm here to learn more than anybody. So hey, if you're listening and you're not learning, that's, you know what, check your EQ, check your self-awareness. Again, we're not here to say right or wrong, good or bad. These are just some fantastic tips and some tools that are there for you to be able to talk about continuous improvement as something that's actually happening in your life, as opposed to you just watching it happen either in somebody else's life or, watching it on TV, so to speak. So one of the other tools I just wanted to ask you real quick, you talked about a life journal. Is that different than your weekly planner?
No, so what I did is I started out in my 20s as a big Franklin Covey time management type system.
Sure.
And then a couple of years ago, when I wrote the book and started to talk about purpose, goals, weekly planning, daily planning as a system for success, I couldn't find a planner that allowed me to do that. And so I put those all into one, and that's that planner that I just showed you.
Excellent.
And that's available on my website. I was trying to keep it simple enough because I don't know about you, Dave, but I think a lot of people find the planners too structured.
Sure.
Like, what if I don't have a million things today? And then I waste a pay, and so I tried to keep just those big bullet headings to allow you to plan and then learn. And a lot of white space for people then to take notes and to make their plans, rather than a super rigorous structure that, oh my goodness, I don't have all that today. So
sure.
I tried to find that balance between structure and freedom.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about another comment that I want to talk about as we start to come in for a landing today. You talked about purpose statement. So I know there's mission statement. I know there's vision statement. I know that these, nebulous terms kind of float around, and I've seen a paragraph hand painted on a wall. And then I've heard people say, we don't follow that anyway. We don't even know what it is, So what to you, where does purpose statement kind of fit into all this continuous improvement?
Well, I'll mention it from a personal standpoint, but if leaders are thinking for company, it's the same thing. And one, you need to spend reflective time, figuring out what it is so that you can be intentional and you can live your best life on your front foot. And I could teach you how I did it and how I teach people to do that. And then two, and this is where the rubber hits the road, it can't be just an executive exercise or an individual exercise that you go away and you have 6 words or 50 words and then you never look at it again, or you look at it next year. Then it won't work. It'll be rubbish. It'll be a waste of time, right? It's all in the reinforcement. And that's why I put it at the front page of my planner so that I can look at it very often to say, how well am I living that purpose? Do I need to tweak anything? So that's huge. But actually how to do it. If I could tell a quick story, Dave,
Sure.
And I started my MBA program at 26, so over 30 years ago. And I moved out east, moved my family, 2 kids, big move, away from everything I knew and loved, and started this program. I was one of the youngest in the program, and I knew I least experienced as well. So anyhow, we get in about 6 weeks, and I get the first test back, and I had worked my tail off as hard as I knew how to work.
Sure.
And I get this grade back, and it was one of the lowest in the class. In my economics class with Professor Don, bald hair, glasses, I can still see it to this day. And I was devastated.
Professor Don, if you're listening, man, thanks a lot.
That was 32 years ago. Hopefully he's,
probably still teaching. So just be careful.
I was devastated, and I had a bit of a pity party on Friday night. Yeah. Why did we move? I said to Cheryl, we took this risk and blah, blah. So, and I had read Don Boyle and Stephen R. Covey in my undergrad, I had done some readings about mission statements and the value of it for companies and for people. And I call it purpose statement. I'm using the terms interchangeably. I know some people don't, but I use it interchangeably. Sure. And so that weekend, I wrote a purpose statement. It was 42 words long. It had the words continuous improvement. It had the words, compassion and acceptance for myself and others as the second line while I'm trying to practice continuous improvement. So I didn't think much of it. I got back to class. I wasn't valedictorian. I wasn't the lowest. I did okay. It came to recruiting time. And this was back in the day before computers, and you have to, sign up for it on the wall. This was archaic. So I put my name down for this one job that it talked about in their ad. It had the same words that were in my purpose statement. And I'm like, what? This is incredible. I went home to Cheryl and said, I found my job. This is it. I know it's it. I applied for it. Well, a few days later, the posting came back. You had to go back in the recruiting office, and there was 10 names, and I wasn't on there. And so before I could throw a pity party and get despondent and discouraged, I phoned the recruiting office, and they said, and I don't think I was quite this bold, but maybe I was, and said, this is Rick Heyland. I applied for the job. And at the time it was in, a small consulting company. And I said, I think you made a mistake. Oh, well, let me pull up your resume. What's your name? Heyland? No, Heyland. Could you look it up? Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Heyland, you're really young and you're very inexperienced compared to the other candidates, but hey, you got chutzpah, write up your name, number 11 at 5:00.
There you go.
Right? On
There's
the wall,
a tip for you.
I think it was like the following week when the partners came back. So you know where the story's going. I was the only one that got the job. Wow. I retired a couple of years ago as COO, second largest shareholder. So, and all that was not IQ. I can assure you of that. It was EQ and MQ. Yep. And it was really from that purpose. I got super clear on what my strengths were, who I wanted to be in the future. Because I think the purpose exercise, as you probably agree, is both looking backwards and forwards. Don't just look back. Right. Don't just say, what are your strengths? Yep. Also look forward and say, who do I really want to be? How do I remember it? How do I want to lead? So anyhow, it was a tremendous influence in my life. That's so when I retired, I thought, wow, I didn't know about your book. So I need to get this out there and let people know the power of big P purpose and small p purpose.
Wow, that's great. Write your name on. So that's what, back in the day when you'd have to look to see if you made the team or not, right?
Exactly. Same thing
for high school,
so embarrassing
stuff, man. Just write your name on there and say, hey, that's it. I'm claiming this one. So that's so cool. And I think, it's interesting because people, listening that may need a nudge, may need some help from you, I think because of the fact that you took a firm from 33 people when you started, and then it was at 250 when you retired, obviously, continuous improvement had a huge impact in that. And so I always tell people, if you needed brain surgery and you had to choose between two brain surgeons and one had written every book and read every book and taught every class and mastered everything, but never did a single brain surgery in his life or her life, and you compare that to somebody that didn't read, didn't write, didn't, have the same schooling, but has done thousands of the surgeries, which one would you take? And the vast majority of people, when I ask that question, Rick, say, oh my gosh, I totally would take that with, somebody that, has done it all their life. And that's what I think was so cool about, you hanging out here is you started, where there was 33 and you grew it to 250. So you're understanding the growth part. And that's what I think is so cool. So when you say, how serious are you about growth? You're looking at it from I did this perspective. It's the same way with me. When I started my business in 91, we literally had $0 of sales. And when I sold it, we had only 22 people, but it went from 0 to 22. It went from 0 to 10 million in annual sales. And so those are the things that, we add value to, struggling businesses or people that want to do it better. So I totally appreciate, that's a huge jump. Was a lot of it, your continuous improvement that you're using now? Is that a lot of what you, built that with?
Most of our clients were super big businesses in resource-based industries. So everything from, Boeing to American Airlines on the airline side to Shell and Chevron on the oil and gas side, lumber companies, mining companies. So so now what I'm trying to do, and what I found, that for small business, they're so busy and they can't afford big consulting groups to come in and help them with the changes. So that's kind of my passion now, is to work with small business to say, here's the tools, here's the mindset, here's the skill sets you need to do. And so that's kind of my philosophy, but there's the same principles.
Sure.
You know, small business has the same issue around trusting employees with their customers and clients. So many small business, whether you're retail or sales or whatever, well, I can do it best. I'm the owner. I started this thing. How can I trust somebody else, right? That's the exact same issue in big business as it is in small business. In fact, even maybe more important in small, because let's say you're only 6 people. How can I trust my most valued customers and clients with my employees? But then if you get stuck in that trap that you're irreplaceable, you can't grow. You don't have the time to be the CEO. You're always the doer. So I actually just put a video up on Facebook on this one, Dave, and it's called Trust and Verify. The whole idea that people aren't training and holding accountable their employees in a powerful way, not a negative way. That's not what I'm talking about here.
Sure.
What I'm talking about, and the 2 tools that I teach to small business owners, is get a 1-pager or a half-pager. Just write down in rough form what you're going to hold people accountable for. What are the tasks? If there's a measurement involved, great. But what are the tasks? How do you want it? When do you want it done? And then every 2 weeks, meet with them for 20 minutes. Sit down with that 1-pager, have them update it, have them identify how well they think they did, get their voice in the room first. And then that's an opportunity for you to give feedback. But it's a little bit more structured than what most small businesses do. Most small businesses do it on the fly. They're so busy. But if you can carve out time to do a half-pager, you get super clear. I'm not talking about a job description. I'm just talking about get down the basics of what your expectations are for excellence. And then meet with them to start with every other week for 20 to 30 minutes. And by the way, after a while, it can go to monthly. And after a while, it can go to quarterly.
Sure.
But that's how you develop people on the go. It's not through giving them crap when they make a mistake with the customer or their closing rates aren't good enough. So that's a couple of tools that small business owners can use to trust and verify and properly delegate.
Wow, that's awesome. And interesting. So from my side on Growing on Purpose, I found some more information from Gallup, and they asked 10,000 people, or 10,000 companies is what it was, what are the top 4 leadership characteristics that you really, what do you want from your leader? And trust was one of them. It was compassion, stability, hope, and trust. And trust was one of them. And so we use that word so loosely so often, Rick. And so, I appreciate you sharing that. If you're a leader and your team doesn't trust you, the chances of them being engaged at work are 1 in 12. I mean, that's just crazy that if you don't have that trust, and that's one of those things that you can do for free. It takes definitely energy. It takes practice. It takes, time. It's not like you got to spend all this money, but I love that word trust because it really separates companies and really builds, from within, because as soon as a leader is trusted, that engagement goes to 1 and 2, so it's like a 6-fold increase. It's crazy what trust does in a company.
Yeah, well said. And I believe those numbers are absolutely true. What my passion is, Dave, is to give, because I think most leaders know that conceptually, engagement, trust, positive accountability, conceptually, but they're busy.
Yep.
And they got their full-time job, so to speak, to do.
Yep.
And so what my passion is, and you could probably tell from my website, and is to give people the how. Like, okay, I buy into purpose, I buy into trust and verify. How do I do that? And so that's why I've tried to put those simple tools up to give people some tools to do it. In my book, in chapter 3, I lead people through the 777 process, the questions over 7 days you can ask yourself so that you can have, because a lot of people get frozen. Well, man, I got to get this perfect. How? 7 questions, 7 days, 7 journal sessions. You've got your 6 to 50 words done. I also have, if you want that sent to your mobile phone, you can also get it on Piecemeal on my Facebook site or my website. There's a Piecemeal, cool piece of software that every day at whatever time you identify, this 2-minute coaching will come to you. You journalize, answer the questions, and in 7 days you have your purpose. And there's also a free PDF on the website. Also, if people just want to do that and jump into that right now. So I'm very passionate about the how, not just talking about the idea of trust and verify, but here's 2 tools to do it. A 1-pager and every other week, a one-on-one, not a group meeting, a one-on-one. And then you can reduce the frequency as your training and feedback goes on. So yeah, teach them the ideas, the mindset, and then give them a few tools to how to do it.
Yeah. And the accountability is so huge. If we don't, tie that all up with accountability, I'm almost getting hesitant as I don't tell anybody this, but I'm almost getting hesitant to do these half-day or full-day trainings that they pay me to do, because I really think the behavior modification is in the follow-up. It's in that accountability, because you and I have everybody listening's been to a half-day training. You get all super pumped up about whatever the topic was, but boy, the curve of forgetting is like, Rick, within 48 hours, like 80% of what you learned, you forgot if you don't reinforce that. So wow. How does your reinforcement work?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that from a business perspective and also a personal perspective, because I think there's the same principle of accountability works in both. So from a business perspective, if you've developed this new purpose statement, you make sure and gather your senior staff quarterly to review, and then maybe later on every 6 months on how well you're living that. Are there any new strategies we need to implement? That's how to keep your purpose statement alive. On goals for your business, if you're not having a monthly staff meeting with your staff reporting to you on their 1-pagers, you're missing on accountability. You're wasting your time and theirs on proper accountability and training and development of your staff. So I highly encourage, I don't have time for meetings. I'm talking about that monthly goal meeting. You've got 5 staff members sitting around. They've updated their 1-pager, not you.
Yep.
And they're going to tell you in my highlights, my next steps for next month, and how well I did on my goals, hopefully in measurable terms. That's accountability. That's how you set up. And then they are working their hearts out for the rest of the month so that they can look good in front of you and their peers at this accountability meeting next month. So that's on the business side. On the personal side, the same thing applies. We all think we have to solve our problems, or I have to figure it out by myself. Get a coach, get a trusted advisor. Could be a parent, friend, a sibling, a formal trained coach. I mean, the best golfers everybody has a coach.
Yep.
Why do we think in our self-development journey as leaders or as people, I'm going to do it, I'm going to figure it out by myself? That's pretty macho. It's pretty, I don't know, it's ingrained in ourselves. But if you're really serious about growth, says Dave, you get an accountability partner or a coach to help you. And sometimes it's different. Like I go to different people for finances than I do for health and fitness.
Sure.
It's not necessarily one size all. So get people in your corner that help increase your self-awareness and help you develop and get better at a faster rate, just like professional athletes do. So anyhow, sorry, you got me a little excited.
No, it's awesome. Well, and that's the difference between Tiger Woods' swing and Charles Barkley, right? No offense. I know you listen, Charles, but it's one of those things that we all know your swing needs a little help. But if a guy people ask me that all the time, why would I need a coach? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that if a guy like Tiger Woods or a guy like Michael Jordan, 2 of my favorite athletes, if those guys needed coaches, to some outside looking in saying, hey, do you do this with your swing? Do you know that you do this with your shot? As a business owner, do you know that you do this with your money, or you don't do this with your customer? Whatever that is, that's that outside influence. So very well said. I appreciate that information, Rick. So cool. I got 2 questions that I'm going to let you go. Tell me, Rick Heyland's tip of the week.
Oh, tip of the week. Well, I already talked about trust and verify. That's been going on big time in my coaching. Here's the other one. Know what your one thing is. Small business owners or in your personal life, but I'll speak to business right now. Figure out what your one thing. You can't do everything. You can't do everything well. Figure out what your highest point of leverage, usually it's revenue, but not always, is for growing your business. Like in my own consulting career, a lot of my peers, there's so many things to keep busy. There's employee efforts. There's internal RLG, make sure the margins are right, the policies are right, the paperwork's done. And then there's client interaction. Those are the big three buckets in professional services. What's the most important? I can tell you, taking care of the client and building trust with the client. We just talked about that, particularly when you're selling non-tangible, big ticket, year or two long consulting interventions. Needs trust. They have to develop trust. And so you spend most of your time doing that one thing. How do I build trust? Well, I bring them insights and feedback that will help improve their business. So you can go through this whole conversation about, in my business, I can't do everything well. It's impossible. You're going to burn out, stress out. What's the one thing I have to do well? And then to get that, if it's revenue, what's the one thing? What's the most important thing to drive revenue in my business? And if you're not clear, sit down with a coaching partner and talk that through. And figure out what your highest leverage point. Does that mean you don't do all those other things? No, not absolutely. It might mean you don't have to do some things, or it might mean you delegate some of those things, or you get a contractor for some of those things. I'm dealing with entrepreneurs that because of cost, they won't hire contractors to do the housekeeping of their retail site or other jobs they don't need to be doing. But if they delegated that to a contractor or an employee, so they could spend their time on the one thing, they would drive it would make such a demonstrable difference in their business, but they're hanging on to staying busy instead of focusing on the one thing.
Yeah, that's really well said. I mean, and if you're listening and you're charging $300 an hour and you don't see the justification of paying somebody $100 an hour so that you can go do your 300, that's like pretty simple math, but I totally get the fear. Because I was there when I started my business, I did everything, and you just do. And then there was a day where somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, are you sure that this is the best use of your time? You could be doing this instead of you're doing this." And from that point on, I really took a whole different view on that. So thank you. Thanks for that too.
Dave, I had a client one time in Houston tell me that exact same thing. And he said it this way. He says, "Rick, I need your team doing $300 an hour consulting, not $50 an hour consulting." So show me what the highest show me what the $300 an hour is, and then nail that. And then ask my team to help or delegate or don't do it. But we can help out with some of the other things. But you guys do the $300 an hour consulting.
Yep, that's awesome. Cool. All right, last question. So this is a good one. This is always the fun one. So what's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Oh man.
There you go.
You didn't even give me a heads up on this one.
Not at all.
There's embarrassing stuff like, well, actually it's not that embarrassing, but here's a good one. So I've ran 13 marathons and 26 half marathons and lots of that's what I did for self-care and to keep my energy up. And so I love exercise and workouts. And I'm a planner, right? So here we go. I just turned 60 and I wanted to run a 10K at not a personal record like when I was 36, but in my more advanced age personal record. So I've been training all summer and I did one around here and I wanted to get under 50 minutes. And so I did one in 49:21 and I was so thrilled. I knew I could do better. So I kept training. And then I always had this dream to sign up for the Huntsman World Senior Games in St. George.
Okay.
And so I signed up for the 10K because I was already in good shape. I was getting my times down and I checked the times from last year, or actually 2 years ago, because COVID, they didn't hold it last year. So there I'm there. I last Sunday night, I drive to St. George from Salt Lake, which is about a 4-hour drive. I register at the convention center. They give me my packet, just like you do for race day, whatever. I'm thinking, good. My wife and I, we go to our place in St. George. I wake up in the morning. The place where we're supposed to go to catch the bus to go up for the race is like literally 5 minutes from my house. And so we get in the car, perfect timing. I've eaten right. My stomach feels great. Everything's good. I get in my kit, drive to the place. No one's there. It's like, what?
Uh-oh.
I missed the email that it got moved to a week earlier.
Oh,
at the same time and same place.
Oh my gosh.
So anyhow, I said, Cheryl, do you mind driving me? I know where the course is. Drive me there, and do you mind picking me up? So anyhow,
I'm doing it anyway. I'm doing it anyway. Nice.
Yeah, I did it anyhow, and I would have come third place, but I didn't come third place. There you go.
Wow. Well, there you go. You got a participation medal, so that's all that matters.
Participation. Right? Yeah. Mental participation.
Exactly. Wow. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Rick. So again, for people that are listening, so I started you out with a question of on a scale of 1 to 10. If you were 8, 9, or 10, and you're still there and you need help, that's why Rick's here. If you're less than 8 and you still want help, he gave you a ton of free, spots. Jump on his website, see what you can look and learn, because there's a lot there. There's tools, there's opportunities to have one-on-one discussions with Rick. So if people want to get in contact with you direct, Rick, what's the best way for people to do that?
So yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Rick Heyland, Heyland. But probably the best place, Dave, is my website, www.CI4life, the number 4life.org. And let me sweeten the pot a little bit, Dave, because I know you probably like this. For the first 5 people that subscribe and get on and register on my website, I will offer you either a free book or a free planner that we just talked about. So the first 5 people here in this podcast, if you subscribe on my website, and then just tell me whether you want the book or the planner, and I'll send it to you. Excellent.
Super. Well, thank you so much for that. So don't wait. If you're listening, jump on. We're done. So you can go ahead and disconnect and get your free book, get your free one. What's better for those of you that are still listening? For those still listening, which one's better, the planner or the book?
Personally, I would start with the planner because that lays out the whole framework. With the book.
Start with the book. Okay.
And then what people do after they've read the book, then they order the planner. But if you think you already know this stuff and you're ready to go purpose, goals, weekly and daily planning. But personally, I think the book is a better starting place, but either one is fine.
Excellent. Well, you'll see by who comes to, hey, I don't need that. The guys that are already mastered this, they don't need either one of them, but hopefully there'll be some people on that definitely want to utilize these tools. So this time flew by, Rick. Thanks. I still had other questions, so I'd like to get you back here soon. And thank you so much for investing this time for our listeners. I took a bunch of notes like I always do. And again, for those of you that are in the business of growth, this has been a great opportunity for you to really catapult your growth. And if you choose not to, that's totally fine too. For those of you that do choose to, Rick Heyland would be a great guy for you to get to know. And worst case is if you tell him that you have under 50 in a 10K and you're older than him, oh my gosh, that'll probably just spur him on even more. Yeah. So I knew it.
Extra motivation.
Yep. He'll be out there right now in the snow. He'll be out there training. So again, thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate all that you've shared with us, and look forward to implementing this soon.
Thanks, Dave.